In this video, we'll talk about lights. We can create all kinds of lights by going to Create menu and choosing Lights. For this course, we will be only looking at two lights. One is directional light and the other one is point light. Let's start with the directional light. Let's click on the directional light in order to create it. Great. So we can scale the directional light to make it bigger. Now keep in mind, by scaling it, it is not going to affect the brightness of the light. So it doesn't matter what kind of scale value you have, it will have no influence on the brightness of the light. Now keep in mind, in Maya 2016, the moment you create a light, it gets a shadow automatically. So if you don't want a shadow, you have to go to Attribute Editor, Shadows, and turn it off. We can go up here and click on this button. That will show us where and which areas will get the light. You can see that as I'm rotating the light, some parts of the scene becomes bright and some part becomes dark. So depending on the angle of the light, depending on where it is shining, it is going to light up. Directional light gives lights in one direction from minus infinity to plus infinity, which means to see the light effect in our viewport, we can turn on this light bulb. Now I said minus infinity to plus infinity, which means even if I keep the object behind the light, it will still get the light in the direction of the light. So whether I have my object in front of the light or behind the light or in the sides, no matter where it is, as long as it is in the scene, it will get light in the direction of the light. So if I rotate the light pointing from up, as you can see, the plane just got lit up. Initially, because it was flat, the plane was dark. Now, because it is looking from up, now the plane gets the light. Okay, let's look at a couple of properties. Number one is the color. We can change the color of the light so that all the objects that the light hits will have the different color. So let's say, for example, if I change this to blue, you can see that the plane becomes blue. If I change this to red, the plane becomes red, and so on and so forth. To have the default color, we can choose white. And we can also increase the intensity, which is basically the brightness of the light. So if I make it 2, you can see that the light becomes more bright. Now, these values you'll have to change depending on the requirement that you have in your scene. Let's talk about shadows. For any light, you can create two kinds of shadows in Maya. The first one is depth map shadow and the second one is ray traced shadows. Now depth map shadows is created with the help of an image. So if I turn on the depth map shadow, I'll have to give a resolution, which is basically the resolution of the image that it creates. And it will just decide which areas are hitting the light and which areas are not hitting the light. And based on this resolution image, it will decide which area are getting shadows and which areas are not getting shadows. It will create a black and white image, and that image will be used to show the shadows. If I enable the shadow here, I can see shadow that is created by the light. Depth map shadow is not very accurate, and it does not give you a good quality. To get a very good quality, you'll have to increase the resolution quite a lot. So alternatively, we can also use ray trace shadows. In order for ray trace shadow to work, if you're working on your Maya software rendering, you will have to enable ray tracing quality here. Or better, we can use the Mental Ray. Now make sure that Mental Ray does not come pre-installed in the latest version of Maya, which is Maya 2016. You'll have to download it separately from the internet in Autodesk website, which is completely free, and you have to install it. So let's enable ray trace shadows, go to render settings, go back to Maya software, change it to production quality, and make sure that we enable the ray tracing, minimize it, make a test render. Okay, there you go. So we have the shadows. Now if you think that the shadows are too sharp, if you want to make them softer, you can also go to The light angle will give a value of 10. Let's check now. I can actually save my current image and take a new render. As you can see, it makes it nice, but it adds a lot of noise. I don't think we want so much of light angle, so we'll reduce it to 5. And to avoid these grains and stuff, we can just increase this number of shadow rays. So I'll give something like 15 here. Let's make a new render. I'll save this image also, take a new render. Okay, so that worked out quite a bit, looking nice. So here we had a lot of noise. Now we don't have a lot of those noise. I'll increase this number of shadow rays to make it nicer. Now keep in mind, the higher these values are, the more time it will take to render. So keep that in mind. So decide on how much of light angle you want and how much of shadow rays you want. I can also try with 2 as light angle. Okay, so that looks much smoother and much nicer. Great. Now let's look at the second type of light. That is point light. I'll go ahead and delete this directional light. I can go to create and choose lights and choose point light. And I can just pull this up. We'll hit render. And as you can see, it basically is an omnidirectional light. So that means like it gives light in all directions from the center. So depending on where the light is, you will get shadows in the opposite directions. So let's say if I push this somewhere here, now we should be able to see the shadows, all of them casting into the left side. So that's how it works. We can again adjust this ray tracing attributes to get a nice softer shadow, and we have the color and intensity. So this is just the basics of the 2 different types of lights that we have. When we work on the file, you will better understand how these lights react to our scene. So this concludes this video on understanding the basics of lights.